How will Caesar make sure the Gauls don't conspire against the Roman anymore? Who will be more in danger? Caesar or Ambiorix? Subscribe and watch the video to discover it. For many reasons, expecting a greater disturbance in Gaul, Caesar ordered a levy to be conducted by his legates Marcus Silanus, Gaius Antistius Reginus, and Titus Sextius. At the same time, he requested from Gnaeus Pompey, the proconsul, that since he remained near the city with command for the sake of the Republic, he should order those whom he had enlisted under the consular oath from Cisalpine Gaul to assemble and proceed to him. He believed it was very important for the future perception of Gaul that Italy's resources appeared so vast that if any setback were suffered in the war, it could not only be quickly repaired, but also augmented with larger forces. Pompey, contributing this both to the Republic and their friendship, quickly completed the levy through his men, and before the end of winter, 3 legions had been raised, equipped, and brought, doubling the number of cohorts lost with Quintus Titurius. By this speed and the size of the forces, he demonstrated the power and discipline of the Roman people. After Indutiomarus was killed, as we have explained, the command of the Treveri was transferred to his relatives. They did not cease to solicit neighboring Germans and offer money. When they could not gain support from the nearest tribes, they tried further ones. Having found some willing tribes, they confirmed their agreements with oaths and secured their promises with hostages. They allied themselves with Ambiorix through a pact and treaty. When Caesar learned of these events, seeing that war was being prepared on all sides, the Nervi, Aduatuci, and Menapii, along with all the Germans on the near side of the Rhine, were in arms. The Senones did not come at his command and were communicating plans with the Carnutes and neighboring tribes, and the Treveri were frequently soliciting the Germans with embassies. He thought it prudent to consider war more seriously. Therefore, before winter was over, he assembled the nearest 4 legions and unexpectedly marched into the territory of the Nervi. Before they could either gather or flee, he captured a large number of people and livestock, and after allowing the soldiers to take this spoil and devastating the fields, he forced them to surrender and give hostages. Having swiftly concluded this matter, he returned the legions to their winter quarters. With the Council of Gaul announced for the beginning of spring, as he had previously established, and seeing that all had come except for the Senones, Carnutes, and Treveri, he judged this the beginning of rebellion and revolt. He decided to move the council to Lutetia of the Parisii, who were neighboring the Senones and had joined their state during the memory of their fathers, but were thought to have been absent from this council. After announcing this from the platform, he marched the same day with the legions to the Senones, covering great distances. Upon learning of his arrival, Acco, who had been the leader of this plan, ordered the people to assemble in the towns. Before they could accomplish this, it was reported that the Romans were approaching. Out of necessity, they abandoned their plan and sent envoys to Caesar to seek pardon, approaching through the Aedui, with whom their state had been allied since ancient times. Caesar, willingly granting pardon to the petitioning Aedui, accepted their excuse, considering that the pressing summer campaign was for war, not for holding trials. After demanding hostages and handing over 100 to the Aedui for safekeeping, the Carnutes also sent envoys and hostages, using the Remi as mediators, who were their patrons. They received the same responses. Caesar held the council and ordered the tribes to provide cavalry. With this part of Gaul pacified, he focused his mind and efforts entirely on the war against the Treveri and Ambiorix. He ordered Cavarinus to accompany him with the cavalry of the Senones to prevent any disturbances in his absence due to his anger or the hatred he had incurred from the state. Having settled these matters, knowing that Ambiorix would not engage in a pitched battle, he considered what other strategies Ambiorix might employ. The Menapii, neighboring the Eburones, were fortified by continuous marshes and forests, and had never sent envoys to Caesar to seek peace. Caesar knew Ambiorix had a refuge with them, and had learned that he had also established friendly relations with the Germans through the Treveri. He thought these supports should be removed before attacking Ambiorix directly, to prevent him from hiding among the Menapii or forcing an encounter with the Transrhenane Germans in desperation. With this plan, he sent the baggage of the entire army to Labienus among the Treveri and ordered 2 legions to proceed to him. He himself set out with 5 light-armed legions against the Menapii. Relying on the protection of their location, they fled into the woods and marshes with all their possessions without assembling any troops. Caesar, dividing his forces with Gaius Fabius, the legate, and Marcus Crassus, the quaestor, quickly built bridges and approached from three sides, burning buildings and villages, and seizing a large number of cattle and people. Compelled by these actions, the Menapii sent envoys to seek peace. Caesar accepted their hostages and confirmed that he would consider them enemies if they harbored Ambiorix or his envoys within their borders. Having settled these matters, he left Commius the Atrebation with the cavalry as a guard among the Menapii, and set out himself for the Treveri. While these things were happening under Caesar's command, the Treveri, having assembled large forces of infantry and cavalry, prepared to attack Labienus with one legion that was wintering in their territory. They were not more than a 2 days' march away from him when they learned that 2 legions had arrived, sent by Caesar. They established their camp about 15 miles away to wait for the German reinforcements. Labienus, aware of the enemy's plans and hoping their recklessness would provide an opportunity for battle, left 5 cohorts to guard the baggage and set out against the enemy with 25 cohorts and a large cavalry force. He established his camp about a mile from the enemy. A river with steep banks, difficult to cross, lay between Labienus and the enemy. He had no intention of crossing it himself and did not believe the enemy would either. The hope for reinforcements grew daily. Labienus, speaking openly in council, said that since the Germans were reported to be approaching, he would not risk the fortunes of himself and his army and would move the camp at first light the next day. This was quickly reported to the enemy, as some of the many Gallic horsemen were naturally inclined to favor Gallic interests. Labienus, summoning the tribunes of the soldiers and the centurions of the first ranks during the night, laid out his plan, and to more easily deceive the enemy with the appearance of fear, ordered the camp to be moved with more noise and commotion than was customary for the Roman people. By these actions, he created the appearance of a retreat. These details were also reported to the enemy before dawn due to the proximity of the camps. Barely had the rear of the column passed beyond the fortifications when the Gauls, encouraging each other not to let the expected booty slip from their hands, saying it would be too long to wait for the German reinforcements when the Romans were already frightened, and it was beneath their dignity not to dare to attack such a small band, especially one that was fleeing and encumbered, did not hesitate to cross the river and engage in battle on unfavorable ground. Labienus, suspecting this would happen and wanting to draw them all across the river, continued his march with the same pretense of retreat. Then, after moving his baggage slightly ahead and placing it on a certain hill, he said, "Soldiers, you have the opportunity you have asked for. You have the enemy caught in a difficult and disadvantageous position. Show the same bravery to us, your leaders, that you have often shown to the commander-in-chief, and imagine that he is here and watching this personally." At the same time, he ordered the standards to turn towards the enemy and the line to be formed. He left a few troops to guard the baggage and placed the rest of the cavalry on the flanks. Our men quickly raised a shout and threw their javelins at the enemy. When the Gauls, seeing this unexpected move, realized that those whom they believed to be fleeing were actually coming at them with hostile intentions, they could not withstand the attack and fled to the nearest woods at the first encounter. Labienus, pursuing them with his cavalry, killed a large number, captured many, and a few days later, recovered the state. For the Germans who were coming to aid, upon learning of the Treveri's flight, returned home. The relatives of Indutiomarus, who had been the instigators of the revolt, accompanied them out of the state. The leadership and command were handed over to Cingetorix, who, as we have shown, had remained loyal from the beginning. Well, Labienus was very clever here. What will be the reaction of the Gauls now? What will be their next move against the Romans? Subscribe not to miss the next chapters of the Gallic Wars.